A knight is a warrior of God. He is a servant of the church and an instrument of divine justice. At least that's what they would have you believe. But when it comes down to it, he is simply a man who lives for the thrill of battle, for loot and glory. So if you want to understand the psychology of a medieval knight, you must look at his life before and outside of battle. In today's episode, we will take a closer look at the life of a crusading knight. Stay tuned. Crusades were organized campaigns sanctioned by the Latin Church during which European Christians seized Jerusalem and established states in the Levant. They would come to be known as the Crusader states. There were 8 major crusades between 1095 and 1291. The First Crusade, which lasted from 1096 to 1099, was one of the most significant medieval military expeditions in history. It aimed to reclaim the Holy Land, particularly Jerusalem, from Muslim rule. This crusade saw the establishment of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, marking a pivotal moment in medieval history. Medieval knights played a crucial role in this campaign. These warriors were not only elite soldiers, but also embodied the ideals of chivalry and religious devotion. Their experiences during the First Crusade offer a compelling insight into their lives, motivations, and the impact of the crusade on their identities. There are many questions that immediately come to mind when thinking about the motivation behind the actions of these men. What could drive a whole group of people to abandon everything and go on a holy journey across Europe and the Mediterranean to fight in the Middle East? Let's see how far back the answers to these questions go. The primary source of motivation came from the teachings of the Catholic Church, which promised remission of sins and a path to heaven for those who participated in the crusade. Crusading was seen as a holy duty to liberate the Holy Land from Muslim control and allow Christian pilgrims safe access to Jerusalem. The call to crusade was issued by Pope Urban II in the year 1095 during the Council of Clermont. And many European nobles and knights felt a strong sense of religious devotion and answered the call. But it wasn't just religion. Knights were also motivated by feudal obligations. Medieval society was structured around a system of loyalty and service to lords and nobles. And knights had a duty to defend their overlords and participate in military campaigns. Many knights were also motivated by personal ambitions. The prospect of land, titles, and wealth in the Holy Land attracted adventurers and those seeking to advance their social or economic status. In addition to these motivations, there were also practical considerations. For some, participating in a crusade may have been a way to escape economic difficulties or political enemies in their home territory. It was a chance to start anew in a distant land. And for others, it was simply an opportunity for adventure and excitement. When it comes to the departure of the Crusaders, it is important to note that it wasn't a sudden or spontaneous event. It was preceded by a period of preparations and arrangements. Knights and nobles who intended to participate in the crusade made sure to set their estates in order before leaving. They arranged for the management of their lands and secured the provision of resources for their households in their absence. Family matters were also taken care of, including the marriage of children and the making of wills. As the departure date approached, the Crusaders took religious vows, signifying their commitment to the holy cause. They often did this during a ceremony at the altar, where they pledged to fight for the liberation of the Holy Land and to defend the Christian faith. After taking their vows, the Crusaders displayed their commitment through a visible sign. They sewed a cross onto their clothing, becoming what was called crucesignati, or those who bore the sign of the cross. This practice was a symbol of their dedication to the crusade and a reminder of their oath to God and the Church. The lives of medieval crusading knights were a complex blend of spiritual devotion and brutal hardship. These warriors, who embarked on the First Crusade in the late 11th century, were driven by a combination of religious zeal, feudal obligations, and personal ambitions. As they prepared for their holy journey to the Holy Land, they arranged their affairs, took religious vows, and displayed their commitment with the sign of the cross. However, little did they know that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and sacrifices beyond their wildest imaginations. From the outset, it is important to realize that the First Crusade was not a smooth or easy endeavor. Despite their preparations, the Crusaders faced unanticipated difficulties right from the start. The initial stages of the campaign were marked by setbacks and hardships. The crusading armies, which had assembled in France and Germany, encountered issues such as internal conflicts, supply shortages and resistance from local populations. The first major obstacle came when the People's Crusade, a group of commoners who preceded the main crusading force, suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of the Seljuk Turks near the city of Dorylaeum. This setback not only dealt a blow to the morale of the Crusaders, but also raised questions about their ability to succeed in the arduous journey ahead. Another significant challenge was the issue of supplies. The crusading armies consisted of tens of thousands of soldiers who required substantial provisions to sustain themselves on their long and arduous march. Securing enough food, water and other essential supplies proved to be a constant struggle. The Crusaders often had to rely on foraging and whatever they could gather from the surrounding areas, which was not always reliable or sufficient. In addition to these logistical challenges, the Crusaders also faced opposition from the local populations they encountered along their route. Some regions through which they marched were either hostile or indifferent to the crusading cause, and the knights had to contend with attacks and ambushes. Despite these early challenges, the crusading armies pressed on towards the Holy Land. Driven by their religious zeal, feudal obligations, and personal ambitions. They faced each obstacle with a mixture of determination, faith, and sometimes desperation. The hardships they endured tested their resolve and forged a sense of camaraderie among the knights as they supported each other through difficult times. It was during these moments of adversity that the true character of the crusading knights began to emerge. Their reactions to the unexpected challenges revealed the depths of their commitment and the complexities of their motivations. Some knights drew strength from their religious faith, finding solace in prayer and invoking divine guidance. Others relied on the bonds of camaraderie forged with their fellow crusaders, drawing support from their shared goals and the bonds of brotherhood that developed on the battlefield. Furthermore, the hardships they faced often brought out acts of courage, selflessness, and resilience. Knights who displayed bravery in the face of danger, who cared for the wounded, and who stood by their comrades in times of despair became heroes among their peers. Their actions not only helped to overcome the immediate challenges, but also contributed to the overall success of the crusade. However, the reality of medieval warfare was brutal and unforgiving. The crusading knights soon found themselves engaged in fierce battles against the Muslim forces defending the Holy Land. The clash of arms, the sight of blood, and the stench of death became all too familiar to them. Victories were hard-fought and losses heavy. In the midst of these battles, the knights' perceptions of the crusade and their roles within it were often put to the test. The brutality of warfare forced them to confront the realities of violence and the consequences of their actions. Some knights grappled with the ethical dilemmas and the immense human cost of war, questioning whether the means justified the ends. Others reveled in the excitement and the opportunities for personal glory that the battlefield provided. Moreover, the battles also revealed the strengths and weaknesses of the crusading armies. The knights' military tactics, strategies, and equipment were put to the test against the well-organized and determined Muslim forces. They learned the importance of planning, discipline, and cooperation in achieving victory. Yet they also faced defeats that humbled them and forced them to adapt to new challenges. As the crusading campaign progressed, the knights' interactions with the local populations in the Holy Land became more intense. They encountered different cultures, customs, and ways of life, which challenged their own beliefs and perspectives. Some crusaders showed respect and tolerance toward the people they encountered, recognizing the diversity of the world. Others displayed intolerance and prejudice, imposing their own cultural norms and beliefs on others. The crusading knights were not a homogeneous group. They were individuals with their own beliefs, values, and motivations. Their experiences during the campaign highlighted the diversity within the ranks of these warriors. Some knights were deeply religious, driven by a sincere desire to liberate the Holy Land and protect Christian pilgrims. Others were motivated primarily by personal ambitions, seeking land, wealth, and glory for themselves. This diversity of motivations often led to tensions and conflicts among the Crusaders. Differences in religious devotion, social status, and personal ambitions created divisions and rivalries within the ranks. The question of who should lead the crusading armies, how resources should be allocated, and how victories should be shared were subjects of contention. Despite these internal divisions, the crusading knights ultimately forged ahead, determined to achieve their ultimate goal of seizing Jerusalem and establishing a permanent Christian presence in the Holy Land. The challenges they faced, the battles they fought, and the interactions they had with others shaped their perceptions of themselves, their faith, and the world around them. And that concludes our video on the life of a crusading knight. If you like the content, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Leave a comment down below about your thoughts of the Crusades. Also, don't forget to stay tuned for our upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.